Hey Spencer.
Hey, how's it
Hey, how's
going,
it going?
AJ?
Good, man. How you doing? Good, man. How you doing?
Good.
All right, so cheesy elevator music. But I figured, people joining early. We have a handful of people that have already joined, so I just want to go ahead and start off the webinar today, kind of talk about kind of the reason for it. So when we were at the Job Tread show back in January, Spencer, you were there as well. We got a lot of feedback from an ed session that I got that I had while I was there where I talked about my own remodeling company and growing it and touched very horizontally on a handful of topics from sales, business development to production, and marketing was a big piece as well. So we decided to do this diving deeper series where we just go to town on like specific topics, dive a little bit deeper vertically. And today's is all about marketing. So we had one last week. If you guys missed it, I had Tim Fowler as a special guest. Good Q&A session. Talked about some really fun stuff. And hey, Susanna. Um, and so we wanted to continue this session, or sorry, this series with here today with marketing. So I'll introduce Spencer here in a second. And just so everybody's aware, if you missed last week's, it is on YouTube. I'll send a follow-up with a link to that in case you want to, peruse that while you're driving, just listen to it. And then the next one after this is going to be with Eric Fortenberry, CEO of JobTread. We're going to spend some time really talking about developing good sales processes, as well as just good old standard business development, organizational development. Focusing on those two things is like the linchpin for building, building your company up and growing, making sure that you can see around corners and so on. So today's, again, like I said, is going to be all about marketing. So I have a little intro slide for Spencer. Spencer, forgive me, I did not ask you for a bio before this meeting. I apologize. So what I did was I actually went on ChatGPT and I said, "Hey, can you write a quick little professional bio for Spencer Powell from Builder Funnel?" And this is what it gave me. I hope it's accurate. But do you want to take a minute and just introduce yourself and why you're the special guest on the marketing webinar?
Yeah, for sure. And AJ, yeah, it's pretty funny because this is pretty close. I should actually just go pull the bio that I usually use and send it to you. And I think side by side they're, yeah, I don't know, like 80-90%. I feel like pretty spot on. So
Pretty good.
um but yeah, I mean, a little bit of background, got into this industry just because of family. They'd been in the home building business for, I don't know, 80, 90 years. And then my uncles got involved, my dad got involved, and eventually they split up into lots of different divisions. They built homes, they did a lot of spec, they built apartment buildings, retirement communities, they got into custom building, remodeling, handyman, property management, you name it. But I got out of college and was helping my uncles kind of figure out digital. How do we use SEO and blogging and social media? This is kind of like 2010, 2011. And we scaled up their custom home remodeling division at the time from about 2 million to 10 million over about 4 years. And so that was really like my early innings of figuring some of this stuff out. Just developing, I feel like a strong interest and liking for marketing, and especially on the digital side. And then built an agency around it. So today we're about 26 full time. We're based in Colorado Springs, but mostly a remote based agency at this point. There's 5 of us that are local, and everyone else is kind of spread all across the country. And our sole focus is remodelers, mainly design build, but interior remodeling and custom building.
Fantastic. Yeah, Spencer and I have how many shows have we been? We're like roadies now. Like we go to a lot of
Yeah,
trade
yeah.
shows.
Booth buddies. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've known you actually before I even started render attending as just a home improvement contractor myself. We ran into each other years and years ago. So I appreciate you being on the call as like the expert in this arena. I'm certainly no expert. I so a little bit about me for everyone who doesn't know who I am. Obviously, my name is AJ. I own a design build company in Maryland with my business partner, and I started it in 2011. It's a design build between the Baltimore DC metro area, and we have a team of 21. We focus primarily on kitchens and additions, the basements here and there. Let's see, over the last 3 years, we've been hyper growth mode. So we scale from 2 to 8 million. And my biggest accomplishment is that now we're at 8 million. I might have a 5 to 8 hour a week commitment to that business, mostly just meeting with my general manager, my sales director, my production manager, just getting keeping a pulse on what's going on there. What I do in my free time is so I started Render in 2021. So Render was a is a an answer that we had to a problem in 2020 when we couldn't get into people's homes, and so we came up with this strategy to sell jobs remotely, and it was pretty fun because we figured out that remodeling can be done completely different. I think I have so just a quick little thing. So what we did is we created a measuring app that is simple. You guys can see it on the screen here. This is just a little Instagram reel that we put up. So you can capture an entire floor plan in like 2 minutes. And after that's done, we use Chief Architect at Cornerstone. You can watch how quickly we actually get the layout drop. This is obviously sped up, but you can see in all those simple steps, we can actually do high-end design build layouts same day. All of that time that's spent dropping this file and creating this as built inside Chief Architect can happen in 30 seconds now, which is pretty crazy. And the second piece of it is the remote piece. So if you think about it like this, have you ever wished that you could DoorDash your measurements to your office? This is our response to the COVID pandemic that we had, and we can actually send an invite to a homeowner. They can scan just like you saw on the screen, and what I get back on my desk is floor plan, elevations, photos, 3D models, DXF files, everything that I need to actually bid that space completely remotely. So it's huge asset to my team. We probably won't talk about it a whole lot today, simply because we're focused on marketing, but we actually do have a little bit of a marketing play with this that I will mention later on when we talk about getting creative with millennials. But for the most part, that's my entire sales pitch for you guys. It's not what we came here for today. But what we came here today was to talk about marketing. Again, this is a live Q&A. If you guys have questions as we're talking about specific things, you have questions that you want to that you would like us to answer, drop them in the Q&A bucket. Spencer and I'll kind of monitor those questions and bring them up as we go along. But for the most part, we're just going to have a discussion and kind of talk about a lot of the things that are on a lot of people's minds. And if there's something on your mind that is not listed here, again, feel free, drop it in the Q&A and we'll try to bring it up. At the production one that we had last week, we had a lot of questions that we couldn't even have time to get answered. So I've sent a follow-up email. Tim and I kind of tackled a handful of questions after the webinar, and we sent those out in an email. So if it doesn't get answered today, it's likely that we'll go ahead and still provide those answers for you guys. But let's just get into a conversation, Spencer. So I kind of outlined a couple of the like headers of things that people talk about. Well, one of the questions that I get asked the most is marketing, where do I even start? Right. So we talk about like there's so many things out there, marketing channels, from social to print to your website to branding trucks and having an office, not having an office. I mean, let's just talk about these, Spencer. One of the questions that I had for you was, with all the available channels, what is the best use? Where do you start? How do you leverage these? What are the distinct purposes like for each of these channels, like highlights there?
Yeah, it's marketing is a big topic, and especially as we've moved along and you get into digital, there's just so many channels, right? And so I think the best way to tackle it is to start with strategy before you get into all the tactical things. And strategy really is just kind of looking at your resources, so time and money, and then directing them towards, what's going to get you to your goals. And so you kind of think about an example. You might take a $3 million company trying to get to 5 or something like that in a 12-month period. Then, okay, we've narrowed a little bit of the focus here. And then they might say, well, we only don't want to do kitchens and baths. Okay, well, that might now direct some of our focus a little bit different. And then you might look at average project size, and that might shift you up or down, right? Like that might target this neighborhood versus that neighborhood. And so I think it is really important to start with that strategy piece and thinking about, what are my goals and in what time frame, and what am I actually trying to attract? Because most people, if they're saying, where do I start with marketing, probably haven't done much marketing. And that means you've built your business on word of mouth and referral. And if you've done that, then you actually haven't had the opportunity to say, I like these clients. How do I go after these clients? You've just kind of taken whatever comes to you and, adapted to that. And so that's where we always start
Yeah,
is
like one of the
let's zoom out first.
one of the big fears I think that a lot of people have is obviously marketing. I know there's going to be a few people on this call that are below a million, right? So they're either solopreneurs or they're working with just one other person. They may be 500,000, 600,000 in revenue. There's some that are 1.5 million. Like, how small is too small, do you think, to have like a hand in all of these marketing pots? When we talk about having a presence on Facebook and Instagram, TikTok, but then also Google AdWords and having like a Google Knowledge card, like how small is too small? I mean, should any remodeler just have all of these things kind of start to have a presence there already? Is that a good place to start?
Um, I think I would say it depends, which is an obnoxious answer, but I'll kind of dig into that a little bit. I think everybody needs a website. So I think that's pretty safe to say. Like, that's a great place to start if you don't have a website. Because if somebody hears about you from a friend, or they see a truck that's branded, or they go to Google, or they're on social media, like they're ultimately going to try to find your website and get back to your
We've
website.
found that even word of mouth referrals, neighbors, they come to us through the website. So
Yes.
regardless, that's like your curb appeal. Like that's how you're presenting your company is through that. It's like a gatekeeper. That website needs to look fresh because even if they got your name from a neighbor or their mother-in-law, everybody this day and age is going to go to your website.
100%. Yeah, we look at that as like the foundation for all of your marketing. But in terms of, like, you asked about like Google Ads and social media and your local Google business profile and stuff like that. I think the it depends part is, if you are small, you do want to focus on less, because you just have less dollars and less time bandwidth usually to dedicate towards that. Um, and so getting really clear on who you're trying to target. And then again, it's kind of playing this like long short game, because I would say like the long game is like start building content and creating blog content, social media content, video content. That's not just going to like pour in leads. You're going to build that as kind of this very long tail approach that over time that should produce a lower cost per lead and a higher quality lead. But like Google Ads, you can just go and just start paying for traffic, and you can pay for like more what we call bottom of the funnel searches, and just
Do you
that
think
may
that's
be
smart?
all you need.
Do you think that that's smart for a lot of people? I mean, if with the way the economy is right now, one thing that we've seen at Cornerstone is like a constriction, right? So we see the people dragging their feet to get to a contract. Probably the summertime of last year, we saw the pipeline kind of get a little thin. So like we have like a marketing dashboard. I wish I would have put it in the slide because it's a fun little graphic that shows all of the key data points that we track across the spectrum. I mean, we're talking about our budget, our conversion percentages. We'll talk about sources that we're getting our leads. So we want to make sure we have a healthy balance of referrals, but also a healthy balance of like ones that are generated from social media, ones that are generated from Google, because it's a dashboard that tells a whole picture, has a whole story to it. And you can say, oh, I do all of my work from referrals, but that's sometimes a little dangerous, right? I mean, we've talked about that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the two things with referrals that always make me pause when people say I get all of my work from referrals is, one, it's not predictable typically, because you're just kind of taking whatever comes your way based on whatever word of mouth was happening. But two, as you evolve as a company, the interesting thing is maybe you started out doing, kitchens around 50 grand, 60 grand or something, you tend to get referred more of that. But then you say, hey, we're really evolving our skill set, and we really want to target that like 150, like that was your average job size today, well, it's going to be tough to get referred in those same circles up there. So marketing can actually start to pull you, some of those upper end projects.
And the one thing I will say is if you, as you grow, something unanticipated for me, and I don't know if me or Dad's company kind of felt the same thing, but as you get bigger, the owner becomes separated from the sales engine. And when that happens, the word of mouth referrals that would typically come because they were dealing with the owner all the time, it's like a key man risk, right?
You
So
may
it's like
miss. Yep.
when they're dealing with me, I got a ton of referrals. We actually saw a referrals dip. It wasn't like it was anything that anybody was doing bad, but when they're dealing with the owner, there's almost like that feeling of like, okay, well, I've got the owner of the company, and that's like, oh, you can't get that anywhere else, right? But now we've gotten so big that well, our customers don't even know my name. They don't even know I exist, right? So uh, you can't trust the word of mouth referrals for so long because when you do become separated, you will become detached from those referrals that you counted on for so long. Like, oh, I knew AJ back when he started the company. Like, where is he? It's like, oh, he's not involved. They're like, what? So you gotta prepare for that. So obviously, as you grow too, like you said, there's only so many referrals that you can get. I actually just got a question here. It's my referral percentage. I think last time I checked, our referral percentage at Cornerstone, like word of mouth, I think it was accounting for about 15, maybe 16% of all of the leads that we get. When we first started, probably the first 5 to 10 years in business, that was probably 50% or 60% even. And that's come all the way down. But the difference is it's not like we're getting a lower number. It's just a smaller percentage because we've increased our leads so much from other sources that has given us the ability to kind of scale up, right? Uh,
Question for you, AJ, is
yeah.
how do you sleep at night knowing that only 15% are referral and you have marketing driving the other 85%?
Well, one of the other questions I just got was, how did you increase your leads consistently enough? Do you still get bad leads in the mix? Yes,
Yes.
you always do. You can't pre-qualify enough. We had a poll out on Facebook, I guess it was a month or two ago, and we asked when do you consider a lead the most pre-qualified? And it was once you get to the budget conversation. So what we'll talk about in my next webinar is some changes that we made to our sales process that removed all the friction up front so that we can get to that budget conversation sooner. But render plays a big part in that because we can actually get floor plans, measurements, we can get an idea of the size of the space prior to having 2 feet into this job and spending 10, 12 hours plus. We're actually having that conversation up front. But yeah, you will still the wider the net, the bigger the net you cast. Obviously, you're kind of drawing more in, but we've gotten pretty good at pulling on specific levers. Like you said, when you go up in job size or you go after a specific client or you go after a specific area that you want to get into, you are really hyper focused on I mean we get into the weeds. I mean we like what do these people like, where do they hang out? We're targeting people that they subscribe to like Wall Street Journal, and they're in like Business Insider, they're in finance, there's they like golf, right? So we pinpoint specific things, interests of these people, and that's who we target on social media. And before we jump to the next one, let's talk about like the difference between like social media, what it's used for, and like Google Ads and just kind of more the generic ad spend. Like we've always used Facebook from the start of our company. We always had a great Facebook presence. We got the followers that we wanted. We scaled up to 1,000 followers, and I think we're 2,500 or so now. Someone's gonna have to fact check me. But we scaled up, but social media for us was always about brand awareness. That's all we did. We weren't really focused on trying to get leads from Facebook and Instagram, but we wanted people to know about our brand so that when they're ready to remodel, they're like, oh crap, I follow this company on Instagram. Let me call them, right? So do you see that companies are using it for the same or different purposes?
Yeah, and so I love what you just said there because branding what you said, hey, we started with brand awareness on Facebook. We didn't want to use it for lead gen. But then as you described it, you said, I want people to know about us so that when they are ready to remodel, they reach out. That's lead gen. Branding is lead gen on a long time horizon.
Yes.
And so yeah, agree. Is social media, I think people hear it, they're like, oh, social media, I can generate all these leads. You can generate leads from social media. We work with a bunch of different clients in lots of different markets. When I look at the data, social media is only like 3 to 5% of the lead gen actual activity. But that doesn't mean that it isn't important. So let's go through another example. If somebody's actually like sitting here today, they're like, I'm ready to do my kitchen. They're not going on to Facebook to be like kitchen remodeling company. And, they go to Google, right? Kitchen remodeling company in Colorado Springs. They find a company, they find 3 companies, they bounce over to your social media and go, who are these people? They're going to see your website and they're going to go check out your social media. But you can also use it the way you guys did it, whereas, hey, I'm going to build an audience of people that are in my target zip codes, in my areas, friends, family, referrals. You start just like branching out and building that audience, and they're just people that are following you. And then over time, when they're ready, if they're ready, a lot of those people will never, work with you, and that's okay. But what you're trying to do is just say, hey, these are the right type of people, just going to stay in front of them, and eventually it will produce some leads. But a lot of times it doesn't show up as the original like first contact, right? Because they did a Google search, they found out who you are, they bounce over to your Instagram or Facebook, follow you, and then even if 5 years later they click over from one of your Instagram posts and then reconvert and book a meeting, the original source was actually Google, and then the social was like all the nurturing. So they
Yeah,
play
so
different functions. Yeah.
you're basically describing omni-channel marketing. I mean, that's a familiar concept, I think, with a lot of people, but just making sure that your message, your brand, is consistent across all these platforms. So when someone says, hey, should I be on social media? Should I be here? Should I be there? Which one's more important? My answer is like all of them, right? Because you will get people from all over, depending on where they're finding you, and they want to make sure, like you said, they're going to bounce over to your social media. If your social media, if your Facebook page has a post from like 2021, that's the last time you posted, your like the confidence level of that customer drops a little bit. Not that you're doing anything bad, but wait, are they still
It's
around?
perception, right? Yeah.
Exactly. It's having consistency, with posts, good content everywhere, just a really good solid, we're everywhere. You can find us anywhere. If you Google Cornerstone Remodeling, we have a LinkedIn page. I do not believe we have TikTok. Uh,
That's
I will,
okay. Yeah.
I'll reserve my comments on TikTok, but
Yeah.
um, we have a question in regards to social media. Do you use or find it useful to boost posts? Would you consider posting ads versus just boosting posts or both? I have a
Yeah.
lot to say here. Spencer, I'm sure you do too.
Yeah. Yeah. I both is the short answer. I like using boosted posts to say like you have a following, and then you're like, okay, I want more of my following to see this post because let's be honest, Instagram, Facebook, they're going to show your post to like 10% of your following, and then if it gains traction, they'll show it to more. But you can just boost to access more of your own audience that you've built there. But you can also tell those social networks to find similar people. So if you've built your following around a pretty like thoughtful audience, then boosting can actually help you reach a similar audience. Or you can just go in and target like certain zip codes and say, hey, I really want to go after this audience. So it accelerates, I would say, that brand exposure. When you're running an ad, I typically want to run the ad directly to my website, to a page that has an opt-in form, so I can actually drive a
Yeah.
lead.
So I was going to say, it depends on what we're trying to accomplish with it. So what we'll do is we'll go on and look at, I mean, Meta has a very confusing dashboard. It takes a while to get used to it, and they change it every 3 months.
Yeah.
But when you go on, you can actually get analytics for a lot of the posts that you've made, and as well as the ads. And you can measure performance. So what we'll do is we'll go in once a month and see what posts did we do last month that we focus on engagement. Which ones did grabbed people's attention? Why did it grab people's attention? And a lot of times what we'll do is we'll convert that particular post into an ad. Sometimes. Other times we'll just use it just to, again, kind of nurture that brand awareness and get a little bit more saturated, whether it's to get more followers or steer people to the website. But in specific ads, we try to go after, we will boost ads on Facebook and Instagram to drive people to the website so that they can learn more. It's a part of and Spencer, you probably have this, and probably too much to get into today, but when we're talking about retargeting and nurturing that pipeline, there's a lot to be said there. When you drive traffic to the website, one thing that we found last year was that when we were driving people to the website, because we had awesome stuff happening on social media, we had awesome stuff happening with Google, but people weren't scheduling the appointments. We weren't getting the leads, the calendar appointments that we wanted. So there was something broken right there, and then that we isolated. We found out that okay, well, people were getting tons of traffic, but that's not the KPI that really matters, is it? It's the amount of leads that we get. So we honed in on kind of correcting that. We're getting a lot of traffic, and we're paying a lot of money to get it. We'll talk about budget here in a minute. But if my leads are stagnant, I'm wasting a lot of money. So it's like, how do we crank on that conversion? And a lot of it happens with retargeting. So we have, so in full disclosure for this entire group, Cornerstone doesn't use Builder Funnel. I'm sure we could probably get a lot out of Builder Funnel. We have a makeup that's a little different that we'll also get into later about hiring in-house or hiring an agency. There's pros and cons to both, but ultimately we have this AI company out there that actually does all of our nurturing. They'll gauge, someone goes to our website, they can gauge their propensity to buy and look and say, this person stumbled across your website. They have no history of looking at remodeling or anything. So let's not spend money on them. But if someone stumbles across your website that has visited a competitor's website, or they have checked out like HGTV or Googled something in referring to kitchen remodeling, there's a higher weight that's placed on that person. They'll actually get ads placed on their Facebook, their YouTube. They'll get a postcard in the mail, which is a little creepy. But retargeting, that's one thing that we found is that when we're generating the traffic to our website, keeping them there and then also reintroducing them to your brand over and over and over again really helped us like climb those leads. So retargeting, really important. Um, there's another question here before we move on to lead gen and budget. How many posts would you recommend? Is posting too much hurtful? I'll say at Cornerstone, we have maybe 3 or 4 posts a week, and we spruce it up. We don't do the same things. It's not just a static image every time or you know, a set day for specific things to happen. We'll mix it up a little bit depending on the campaigns that we want to run. If we want to get more basements or get more kitchens, there may be more or less posts in that given week, but we really try to keep it fresh and post like things that people really want to see. A lot of video and before and after like GIFs that will, I don't know, do you pronounce it GIF or GIF?
I say GIF, but I don't know. I actually,
Yeah.
we have a debate internally as well. So
Post your comments in the Q&A. Is it pronounced with a J or a G? So we'll do things that will hold people's attention longer and just to get that engagement because that all of that really helps because the next time they hop on Facebook, they'll see one of our ads. So
yeah.
I would say 3 to 5 a week. I don't know. Do you see anything different with what you recommend for your companies?
I mean, I always like to go back to like I appreciate like blanket recommendations, but I'm also a big like let's dig into the context of it, right? Like if it's that sub-$1 million company, once or twice a week, show that
Yeah.
you're active. That's not going to be driving your leads. Like you want people to come over, see the stuff before and after, see the high quality work, but like you're not trying to ramp up that content production over there. If you're a large company, especially if you have a front facing founder that's like committed to a personal brand, like you could post 3 to 5 times a day and it wouldn't be too much. They're the biggest personal brands out there are posting, you know, 10 times a day across different platforms, and stuff like that. So it, for me, it's always like, what's the, what are we, what are we solving for? What's the big, goal and target? But generally I think like your range is a good, just like broad recommendation, 2 to 4, 2 to 5 times a week. You want to show that consistency and you want to be getting in front of your audience repeatedly. But again, if you don't have enough lead flow, I'd maybe what's the minimum viable amount of posts I can do on social media to show I'm active, I'm professional, and then put your resources elsewhere into lead
I
gen.
like that. Low-hanging fruit tip here is what we changed at Cornerstone. We wanted to be more of like the high caliber remodeling company. And we noticed that a lot of our posts on Facebook and Instagram were just fillers. They were like progress shots of jobs. We actually changed how we did that. We didn't want our Instagram feed to be full of like half done projects or
Yeah.
demo projects.
Yeah.
So we moved all of that to stories. Once we built the audience, the stories are a great way to keep people engaged to see your content. And people are always interested in seeing how nasty something looks or like how awful the space looks right before it gets better. So we'll use Instagram stories for a lot of stuff that's not like finished photos. So that way we keep that feed clean and looking really good. So when people stumble across our Instagram, they look through our portfolio. It's all nice,
Looks sharp.
clean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could also put it behind like a gallery. So you have the nice one, and then you could
Yes.
page to like, oh, here's where it started, and then
Yeah, it's always, hey, click next to see the before. You don't want the
exactly.
before first because if people are like, ugh, click
Exactly.
next to see the before, then it's hidden right behind the new image. That's another good one. Let's talk about lead gen. So obviously, marketing channels galore, and I kind of mentioned that social media for us was more branding, but obviously branding is like a longer play on lead gen. Obviously, everything helps. A company wants to grow. They know they need more leads. Where do you start? Say I'm a
Yeah.
$2 million company. I know how we did it. But like, what's that first conversation with you look like when someone says, "Hey, I've got a $2 million remodeling company. I really want to take it to the next level, but I'm nervous about hiring people because I don't have the leads to keep them busy."
Yeah.
Because I'm sure that's a common.
Very common. Yeah. Yeah, and leads give you confidence to make those hiring decisions, right? You have more leads, you have more sales opportunities, and you have consistent pipeline. You go, okay, I, I'm willing to make that hire. Um, Honestly, the shortest way that I found just online is Google Ads. It's not cheap from a cost per click standpoint, but it's one of the best ways to target bottom of the funnel traffic. And when I say that, I mean somebody with the intent to find a company today, right? They're typing in kitchen remodeling company in a location, kitchen remodeling services, whatever that term is where they're looking, versus what we would call like top of funnel might be like kitchen design trends, or how long does it take to remodel a kitchen. Those people are researching, they're going to be future buyers. But I also like to stack Google Ads with an SEO content strategy, because it's like the old adage about the tree, right? Like, when's the best time to plant a tree? It's like, well, it was 20 years ago, but
Right.
otherwise today. And same with SEO, because that's something that once you start building that presence, you don't pay for any of that traffic once you start earning it. So I like that combination, but the fastest path to bottom of the funnel leads is probably going to be Google Ads, or if you don't want control of it, buying third-party leads, which I don't like.
Yeah,
Yeah,
third-party leads, I would stress to really try to stay away from, your
agreed.
home advisor thumbtack leads. They're going to be way more expensive, and it's almost like just throwing spaghetti at a wall and see what sticks.
Yeah,
You might get a good one from time to time, but ultimately that consistent presence. We talk about, leveraging all these marketing channels. When you do have things all firing on all cylinders, right? I think you can really expand your lead generation to really work well and not overspend, right? So when we would have we do everything from like blog content. You said SEO, like keyword rich content. We started to think ahead about what are people searching for that aren't even intentional about remodeling their house right now. When people think about Google AdWords and SEO, they're really kitchen remodeler in Howard County, kitchen remodeler in my area in Ellicott City. But what happens if people aren't searching, I need a kitchen remodeler in Ellicott City, or I need a kitchen remodeler near me? What if they're searching for something in preparation to take the next step? So we started to think, okay, what questions do people ask early on? We did this fun exercise called empathy mapping. I don't know if you do that with your customers much, but we did empathy mapping, which was crucial for us to understand what our customers are actually going through, what their fears were early on. They were worried about getting taken advantage of, making a mistake in the entire process, from selecting the wrong contractor to the wrong design decisions. So we started to craft a lot of content, a lot of blog content. Again, still keyword rich, but if someone says, "Hey, how do you finance a remodeling project? What's the difference between a renovation loan and getting like a no credit check required loan? Like what are my options there? How do you have your in-laws move in with you when you're only 40? I'm not prepared for that. How do people handle that? What are the zoning restrictions in Howard County? Like we started to start thinking about, okay, if someone was going to put an addition on their home for their in-laws, what questions would they be asking? So when they go online and search it, Google's like, oh, hey, I found just what you're looking for. It's not even an article selling them on a remodeling project. It's something that's just it's rich with educational content. And guess what? When you're leveraging all your marketing channels and you got them to the website on this obscure article that makes you like a thought leader, whatever. Well, now my AI marketing company actually picks it up, says, okay, they just researched this topic. Now they're in the addition pipeline. We're going to retarget addition ads to this particular customer. We're going to follow them through this entire journey. And as they come back, as they see our ad again, they'll get a postcard in their home and they're thinking about it more and more and more. It might be 2 months later, but we have stayed in front of them the entire time. And that's really when we're talking about, lead gen, what works, it's like you gotta like think of it across the spectrum. Like what can you do to get them to your website? And then don't just leave it there. Don't leave the
Yeah.
lead.
Yeah, it's interesting. We do some of that, and then we also back it up even further to like what are the top country clubs in the area, or what are like we have some customers that some of their customers have airplanes and they need like they build a custom hangar for them. So we started writing about like where to store, how to store your airplane and different things like
Yes.
that. And you're going, what does this have to do with remodeling or building it? But to your point, like you're backing it up and you're just saying, these are my customers. I don't know if they're ready to buy today, but when they are ready, I'm going to kind of catch them in this web of their research, which isn't just going to be around what's the latest, color of the year, or, whatever
Yeah.
that's related to remodeling. And so the thing that I'll add to that too, because the retargeting piece is super valuable. And I love if you can also get their info, because some with retargeting it's like they come and then they leave and you're like, okay, it's this anonymous person, but we're able to like profile them and follow them around and that sort of thing. But if they're reading that article on like zoning restrictions and then they get to the bottom and there's like a remodeling cost guide or something that they can download, then you actually get their contact info. And so you capture a lead and then you can do that retargeting through email, and you can deliver them, hand deliver them those pieces of content that you're producing on a weekly or monthly basis. And so then you build this like one-to-one relationship, but you can do it one to many.
Yeah, like having something enticing there that they would want to. I think a pricing guide. Everybody's asking the question. I actually do have a question here. Do you put pricing on your website?
Mm.
You put pricing on your website. That's it. Could be a specific question for me, but Spencer, do you put pricing on your website?
So what we've landed on that we like the best is, because people Google it, you want to rank for it. So we blog about it. But then so a common question would be like, how much does it cost to remodel a kitchen in Denver or whatever? So we're going to write a blog about that so we can rank for that question, start pulling people in. But then as they're reading it, then click here to download the complete cost guide, which could
Yeah,
include kitchen, bath, addition, like, and it's all general range stuff, right? But the
yeah,
cool thing is you can talk about it in the ranges you operate in. And so what it does is it starts to pre-qualify out bad fit leads and pre-qualify in people that had the appropriate budget. So if you do
yeah.
kitchens between 100 and 250, then you're going to put that in your cost guide and kind of talk about why you might be closer to 100, why you might be closer to 250. And if somebody's like, dang, I was hoping to do 30 grand for this kitchen, it's like, well, great. You might just go to Home Depot and like that. So hopefully they don't, contact you. That's actually one of the goals of that. So that's the way we approach it. That way you can pull traffic in through SEO, but then also convert with the guide.
We have pricing info, generic pricing info on our website. But the way that we have that conversation with people is that it's all automated in an email campaign when they set up an appointment. We've got Zapier that kind of pulls that lead through. They get an automatic email that goes back out. Hey, thanks for scheduling your appointment. Here's some things that you need to know about that first discovery call. And in there,
Hmm.
it's like the whole purpose of this call is to make sure that we're a mutual fit. And a big piece of that is talking about your budget for your job. If you don't have one, that's fine. We will talk about it because not everybody, one, they don't know how much things cost, but two, even if they have a budget, they're very reluctant to share it. So we'll put the information in front of you. Like we will come up with the budget and ask you if you're comfortable with that. So
Yeah.
in that email follow-up, it'll say, hey, click here for the pricing guide. And we actually just had one last week that canceled their appointment. They could schedule it on Calendly and they get the automatic email, and then all of a sudden this calendar dropped off. We checked back in, I'm like, hey, why did you cancel? They're like, oh, we just read the pricing information and we were way off. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
cool. So one
Perfect.
conversation
Yep.
that we didn't have to.
Time saved for everybody. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So so budget. We talk about this often. Um when you want to grow your company, like especially for those who aren't perhaps doing anything formally in marketing, maybe they spend a little here or there. Maybe they have a small agency that does some SEO and website stuff for them. Like, really, is there a target range for a budget that someone could anticipate spending on their marketing expenses from ad spend to like whatever. Uh,
Yeah.
I know what ours is at Cornerstone, and it has fluctuated through the years, but we went from spending about 1% to 1.5% of our annual revenue. And when we decided to grow, we bumped it up to 5%, maybe a
Hmm.
little under. It was about 4%, knowing that 4% was only 2% of where we were headed, right? So we had to jump the spend ahead of it. And I think now we're right around 2.5% of our annual revenue. Is that about what you see
Yeah.
across the industry, or is that a unique to Cornerstone thing?
Yeah, 2 to 5% is the range that we typically are seeing and operating in. And I like the range because it's exactly what you described. Like if you're trying to grow more aggressively, you're probably going to bump up the percentage, or you might use the percentage on your desired goal, not your current revenue, right?
Exactly.
But the other interesting thing to think about with marketing budget is where are you in your growth cycle? So if you're overhead, you're kind of like, okay, this is our overhead structure. And really, we could add like a few more project managers and scale up and add like 20 more projects, but our overhead structure doesn't need to change. Then you might say, well, gosh, our gross margin on an average project of 100 grand is 40%. We're clearing 40. Well, that 40 should drop to your bottom line because it's your gross margin and you don't need any more overhead. So you might go 40 grand. Well, would I spend 10 grand to acquire one customer to make 30 more? Probably, but again, that's up to you. And so you can
Yeah.
scale that out and go, well, I might budget 3% up to here, but now because I have this capacity, this growth capacity without having to grow my overhead, I might spend 10%, something way bigger, and it still might make sense. So,
What do you
and I'm
say
a
to the
context
person?
guy. There's no,
Yeah.
it's not like a,
What do you say to the person that those numbers are scary? Because I will say when I first started out, we climbed to, I think our first year in business we did 1.1, and I mean we were like rocket fuel, just drinking it in the morning. I don't know how we did it, but we made it to 1.1 when we weren't spending much on marketing at all. But over the years, I had to spend a little bit more and more and more to really keep that pipeline full. Like to think about spending 30,000 on marketing or even 50,000 if there's a $4 million company in here that's thinking, oh my gosh, like 2% is 80 grand a year. Am I really going to spend $80,000? Like, how do you have that budget conversation? Like, how do you justify, like, this is a good segue into ROI. Like, how can you make sure that if I'm going to spend $80,000 on marketing, that it's worth every penny? Because it's
Mhm.
a fear, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah. So a couple things. One, the most difficult jump is going from 0 to 1% because you really haven't, like, you're $4 million and you haven't really spent on marketing other than some branding trucks and just some little stuff here and there, but it's probably been like
Yes.
0.5% of your revenue, right? And so going to that like 1.5 from zero is the scariest move, but it's usually scary for one of two reasons. One, you're not actually charging enough, and your pricing model wasn't built around having some marketing budget. So I'd say maybe you need to relook at your gross margins and your structure. Or two, you're looking at your owner pay and net profit and going, I'd rather just keep the 80 grand than spend it on marketing, right? And get to the next
There's the
level.
mindset, right?
I think it's just the truth, right? You're just looking at that and going, I'd rather have that in my pocket. But you're just making a short-term decision versus a long-term decision. I think once you've made it past that, then you go, okay, what's the best way to spend the 80 grand, and let's optimize it. You're going to have some waste with marketing. There's going to be testing, experimentation. But what you want to do, I like running that break even. So, okay, if I can add a few more projects, like I've got capacity for that, I just don't have, that, then you're really looking at that gross margin to marketing spend number. And if you're going to land one more project, gross margin 40%, 40 grand, like worst case scenario, you spend 40 grand, you clear 40 grand and you break even, but now you've built some marketing machine and it's going. And then it gives you a little bit of confidence to be like, I didn't lose any money. Like I did the whole other project for nothing, but I
And
learned some stuff and now I can go again.
let's
Right.
and to play devil's advocate here, let's be honest. A lot of people on this call definitely have overhead expenses. So we're not saying spend all of your gross profit to try to land one job, because a company like mine operates at like a 20% overhead to my annual revenue. So for us, marketing needs to have a really big play. It's something that we budget around. We spend almost $200,000 a year in marketing. And it's because, we have, and this is a good segue even to talk about the next step here, which is like talk about hiring the right people to fill the right shoes around the company. So when we're talking about lead gen and developing a budget, what in the world do we spend the money on? It's things that are going to give you the most bang for your buck. And when you look at the most bang for your buck, you have to determine how much are you willing to do on your own as an owner, because I think a lot of owners have or owners, executive assistants or admins will take a good bit on social media, but we're not professionals when it comes to SEO, website, and generating leads. We can hold our own on social media. So like when we talk about like hiring in-house versus hiring an agency, hiring a big agency or a small one, like I'll start here by saying like we did everything in house minus SEO and website. Like we had one guy that we hired, a local small business, and he was like a project manager. He had content creators, and he had a guy that would do like Google PPC, like PPC management. But ultimately, he was like our go-to guy for you know uh, just managing our website and blog content, keywords, all that SEO. We outgrew him. And as we outgrew him, we started to figure out. And I had a content creator that came to me. He did some videos for us, and he said, "Hey, I want to quit my job. I want to come work for you." And this is where I have to tell people, like, I don't recommend hiring anybody in-house at 3 or 4 million. I think it's way too early. I'll say that in a very broad brushstroke kind of way. I think it's too early. It was for us, but we said we can't pass on this hire. We ended up bringing a content creator in, and we turned him into a marketing director. And he's managing all of my marketing for me. It's been a big reason why I've been able to step away. But with him, we have augmented him with like a small agency that does a lot. They're a powerhouse, heavy hitter. They'll do everything from PPC to our website, content creation. Sorry, like blog, like written content. And then Zach still does all our video and social media management. And so it's a really good trio. And then, of course, like I said, we have that AI company that does all our retargeting. So it's like a really good trio. But when they hire an agency like yours, like how much it's probably, I would say, less expensive than the way that we're doing it. I'm 2 feet in now, right? But probably less expensive the way that you guys do it. But what do you see? Like, what would be your pitch, Spencer, when it comes to hiring your firm? If you say it's going to cost you this much, and everybody's like, "Whoa, that's too expensive," uh, it's not. I can tell you that right now, it's not, because when you budget in what you should be spending on marketing, and they talk to a company like yours, you are definitely a clear winner when it comes to good money spent. Just props to you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I guess the way I think about it is and I'll just use kind of like our experience. For the longest time, I would say we served clients in that like 2 million to 6 to 10 million range. And what we recognized is that that was kind of the sweet spot for where, an agency fit, because you kind of like you get 6 different skill sets for the price of a person, basically, is how it works out, right? Like firing or hiring that person that knows SEO, Google Ads, social media, can create content, can write emails, like has all those skill sets in one person is really tough, right? So you kind of get a team of people for the price of one. But then what we recognize is that actually the guys that are sub two, kind of one, half a million, 1.5, they actually have some time, but they don't know what to do. And so then we unlocked kind of a service where we can help guide them, but they're going to do it, right? And then
That's
kind of
valuable.
above that level of like, you kind of get to your size and towards 20 million or beyond, usually have a marketing director, maybe a couple marketing people, and then either you're clipping in the agency for additional support because you're like, hey, we're doing these things, but there's still a lot that we need to fill some gaps on, or you actually want to increase the effectiveness of your people. And you're like, hey, I'm going to hire the agency to kind of consult and guide us in a few areas, but we've got some bandwidth because we've hired some people. And so that's kind of how I see the landscape. But generally, the people that are coming to us that want us to kind of like lead the charge and we're doing like 90% of their marketing, that are just kind of like, we haven't done much. Here, you do all the digital stuff. They're usually in that, 2 to 8 or $10 million range.
Yeah. So generally speaking, if someone says, I am doing X revenue and I want to do 2X that revenue, they know that they have their work cut out for them. And to start, I think a lot of the conversation that has to be had is obviously around building your organization to absorb it. Because if you sell it, we talked about this last week, you sell it and all of a sudden you have a production team
You have
that's
to deliver it.
and Tim Fowler had some great comments on that and how I can't remember what it was. Something about the capacity overload or something, and we talked about how if you're not prepared, like, hey, look, they call Spencer and they have Builder Funnel come in and do the marketing. You're gonna make it happen for them. They're gonna get all these leads, and their sales team is gonna be like, oh my gosh, they're gonna be busy, frantic, and then they're gonna sell a bunch of stuff, and then you've got other issues, right? So, someone who's planning on growing their company, getting their production team, anticipating particular hires, and they're building the organization around it to absorb it. They say, we are going to jump in and we are actually going to spend the money on marketing to actually take that next step. And they say, we will spend 80 to $100,000 on marketing this year so that we can take that next step. What is that next step with Builder Funnel? They call you up, and what's that first conversation look like? Because we're kind of coming to a close on our time, so this is kind of a way like I really want to make sure that people on this call and on the next webinar kind of understand that what we did at Cornerstone was awesome. It was jam-packed with a lot of, it was like an action-packed adventure to get from $2 to $8 million so fast. We did a lot of things right, but we also did some things wrong. How can you have that conversation with someone to say, we're going to help you avoid, the blind spots and help you avoid making mistakes? Is that a right call to like call you and say, hey, we want to grow. Can you help us with that next step?
Yeah. For us, I mean, our sales process is, hey, we've got a booking link, like let's hop on a discovery call. So you'll get connected with my team. And we basically just trying to identify, is this a fit? Like, are you the type of company that we've helped in the past that we've seen success for? Let's get connected. And really, if we decide, hey, this is a good fit, let's make the investment, we're going to hire a builder funnel, then I think there's two things. One is we're always going to start with strategy first before we just be like, let's turn on Google Ads and let's do this for SEO. Like, let's form that game plan and then we can execute hard. But the benefit that you get, I think, with working with an agency is we're coming up on 14 years of doing this just for remodelers and custom builders. We have a team that knows what to look for. So they go, oh, you have these pieces, you're missing these pieces. We can jump to those first instead
Yeah.
of just like, oh, you're a dentist now. Like, let's figure this out. Like, this is all we do. And so we generally know where the quick wins are going to be and what we want to maybe avoid. But each
So,
plan looks a little different, right? If somebody's going from 2 to 4 versus 500,000 to 1, like those plans are different too. So
I'm going to put you on the spot here. Here's the
yeah.
anti pitch. If someone says, I'm not going to hire Builder Funnel, but could you give me an idea what my next step should be? Like, I want to grow my company. What do I need to do first?
Yeah. Well, let's pretend this person maybe isn't doing much online, or how do you want to frame the
Yeah,
like?
I'm doing 2 million. I have social media presence. I can manage it on my own, but I don't know how to run SEO. We have a small agency. We want to double our leads and go to town.
Yeah. Then I would say a very targeted Google ad campaign at your desired service. So if that's we make our most money on kitchens, great. Just keyword set, focus on kitchens, drive that to a kitchen, either landing page or services page that explains your process, maybe has some broad pricing information, has calls to action on how to convert into a meeting or how to download something. That way you'll maximize your conversion rate. And then I would say start up a blogging content SEO strategy. And that can look like what we kind of talked about, which is like, what are all the questions that somebody has in the sales process? Just start answering those in blog posts and writing those. So it could be stuff about zoning, stuff about how long it takes, how much it costs, what the current design trends are, what to expect, how to find the right contractor. Like there's dozens of those questions. Start writing those. And so I would say like those two moves, it puts you in the paid game and the organic, SEO game, and you're off to the races.
One of my suggestions is kind of evaluate what you have in totality. Like, let's take a look at everything that we do. And when you think of the concept of marketing, to think of everything that people know and hear and feel and touch, like all the senses that go into displaying your company for the public. What are they seeing? And what can we improve? What can we make better? And, for us, when we started to evaluate this, we realized we had a lot of friction in people signing up. So when we had a beautiful website, great social media, we still weren't getting the leads. We just realized we had a lot of friction up front. We were the remodeler that wanted to have those, list of 20 questions that someone has to respond to when they email us from online. Because we're like, we're going to weed out the tire kickers on a form. And we realized it was actually detracting people from getting across the threshold to have a conversation with us. Because for us, all it takes is a conversation. People love my sales team. They love them. Great, just good people. Their character, their personality really shines through. So we want people to have that conversation, but we don't want just anybody having that conversation. So we removed a lot of the friction on the sign up page. You can go on to cornerstone.house and you can book an appointment with our team through Calendly on your own. We saw that this was a huge thing for us in getting more leads, and it did not detract from us, having good leads. The traffic, we wanted to make sure was good traffic to the website. And, with removing that friction up front, that was a huge step for us in, especially with younger buyers. They don't like a lot of friction. They like those fast and convenient processes. So removing the friction up front is key. So we have a Calendly link on our website, which has been great for us. Kind of wrap this up. So Spencer, actually, I was going to ask you one question. I'm going to put you on the
Yeah,
spot.
go for it.
We were at the show. You saw Render and kind of what we could do at Cornerstone. Like I said, when we removed a lot of the friction, we have this invite widget, right? So there's this way that a customer who wants a kitchen remodel, they can actually go on and fill out a form, and they get an automatic invite call from the Render API. Sends them an invite where they're like, hey, Render, Cornerstone Remodeling has asked you to scan your space. They can actually go through and scan on their own. And then when I walk in on a Monday morning, or my sales team walks in, they have a lead. Someone wants to do the kitchen. They live here. Yeah, this budget. Oh, this is a great lead. But they also have a floor plan, a 3D model, DXF file, all that stuff. So you mentioned that, this is something that kind of caught your interest. What value do you think that provides for the remodeler to have just that extra little bit of information? How do you think that that's helpful for them?
Yeah, yeah, and we'll be talking some more after. But
Yeah.
two things. I think one is it moves that lead further down into the sales process just from that alone, right? Like they've taken some action, they've scanned, now they're connected to your company
Bought
already.
in. Yeah.
Boom. Like that step is actually a really big step, because they did a little bit of homework, right? So there's like a whole assignment selling thing and everything. It's like, hey, you're interested in doing this remodel? Like go scan it, prove it,
Yeah,
kind of a thing.
exactly.
But now it gives your sales team a really good excuse to call them, just start a dialogue. Even if they didn't book a meeting or whatever, then it's like, hey, I saw you did the scan. What'd you think of the app? Or like, and boom, now you're
And
just
hey,
in a call, right?
you have $100,000 budget for your kitchen, which is a great start. And we get the scan back, and it's like, oh, this is a really small kitchen, it's a small rancher. Like, yeah, we could absolutely do a kitchen for 100 grand.
Yep,
Or you get a scan back, it's like a 900 square foot kitchen. It's like, you might need double that if we're gonna have a so it's a really good way
totally,
for us to actually kind of approach that budget conversation with more confidence, that we're not spooking somebody away with a high number just because we want to rattle their cage a little bit, see if they're serious, right?
totally.
Yeah, more
Yeah,
more to come on that. Like I'll send a follow-up email for everyone who's here. If you're watching on a desktop, you can use your phone. You can actually scan either one of these QR codes, depending on where you came from, what you want to learn more about. My QR code will take you to the render website, but feel free to book a demo with my team through the website, or Spencer, I dropped your booking link in the chat. So if anybody wants to book some time with Spencer, and also some time with me too. Mine's also in the chat. You can scan either one of these QR codes and learn more about the two of us. And I'll back it up one slide here just to remind everybody. In 2 weeks, we're going to have the third part of this series, really focused on sales process and business development, kind of the things that we touched on a little bit today. I think that a lot of these things have to be set in motion if you're going to grow your business, from production to sales, business, and also marketing. Kind of got to make sure that they're all kind of firing on all cylinders. So, Spencer, I really do appreciate you spending the time on the Q&A today, kind of going through some of these. I think we got most of the questions. Thanks, Jim, for the encouragement. For you just said thanks for the quality content. Hope you guys found this valuable. This is recorded. This will be on YouTube when you guys get the email follow up. In case you missed it or want to share it with perhaps your marketing team or your sales team, feel free. And then if you want to register for the third, I'll make sure that the link for that registration is in the email follow up. And lastly, Spencer, are you going to be at IBS in a week? Are you going to be out in
we are
Vegas?
not actually. Yeah,
Not this
we
year?
kind of, yeah, we're digital guys, so we kind of spot pick our events.
Smart. Smart.
Yeah,
IBS is a massive show. If you guys are out at IBS, anybody who's still on the call, if you're out at IBS, want to catch up, I'll be out there. We don't have a booth. We're just going out there to network, see the show. We're talking with a couple other companies in the space, kind of about what Render can do. If you have questions or want to grab a drink or a coffee or a meal or just hang out at the show, hit me up. We'll be out there. My business partner and I will be. So, Spencer, again, I appreciate the time today. I'll wrap it up,
thanks,
and
AJ.
I'll reach out to you after the show. And hope you guys enjoyed the webinar today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks, everybody.
All right, thanks.